Peace and much love, Zin Uru here. Welcome to the latest installment of Message from the Minister. Our message from the Minister this week is let go and let God. Let go, let God. This is Message from the Minister number 10, and I'm so grateful to see y'all here. As I say every week, there is no such thing as time and space in the Spirit. Therefore, no matter where you're at in the world, no matter how far away you're here, we're here together in spirit. No matter how far in the future you're seeing this from this filming, we're here together in spirit. And I see y'all here. I want to welcome y'all here. And if you'd like to join in on that visualization with me of seeing y'all here, see yourself here. What are you doing? There's chairs, there's bean bags and pillows and couches all the way around this room. If you just visualize it and see it, let's see ourselves together, because this whole world is created that there's so much time and space between us, especially those of us that we call hip-hoppers, those of us on the spiritual hip-hop lifestyle. There is a lot of time and space between us, but it's always good to remember that in the Spirit, there is no time and space. Therefore, we are all together as one. That is what the hip-hop consciousness is all about. Our unified consciousness as hip-hoppers. Our collective consciousness as hip-hoppers. Now, this week's message, Let Go and Let God, is a personal message. And really what it's designed to do, what this message from the minister is designed to do, is to get ourselves out of the worldly thinking and even the so-called spirituality of the mainstream world, the Barnes & Noble spirituality, I call it, the so-called law of attraction, which is good and well in its own right, but just this modern idea that somehow the universe, that somehow God is everyone's baby mama and daddy and needs to give us everything we want, however we want it, whenever we want it. And as I've grown spiritually over the course of my life, I've realized that there is a time and space for that type of thinking. But as we grow older and as we mature in our spirituality, we realize that by letting go and letting God, we can arrive at places that we could have never even visualized for ourselves. We can meet certain people that we would have never really visualized, because God knows and sees all. And that part of our spirit, that part of our God, that part of our inner sight that sees beyond time and space knows those things. But if we only rely on creative visualization for everything, for the experiences of our lives, then we're limited to what we already know. And what we already know may be well and good in its own right, but what God knows, what God sees for us, what our loving parent God sees for us, is so much more than we could ever even imagine for ourselves. And that's where I wanted to get to the base of this tonight, the letting go and letting God. Now, I would say sometime around 2007, this movie came out called The Secret. And if you haven't seen The Secret, I suggest you go see The Secret. Another good one, too, is What the Bleep Do We Know About Anything? Boom. I really like both these movies. They actually both came out about the same time. And they talk about the so-called law of attraction quite a bit in these movies, in these DVDs. And, the knowledge in them really works. What I really liked about What the Bleep Do We Know About Anything is it actually gets into the physiology of beliefs, what the physical, what's happening in our bodies, the actual secretions that are happening in our bodies when we believe a certain thing about ourselves. And the secret more gets into the mind state that we're in, and even maybe touches actually on the feeling state that we're in. But it talks about creative visualization. So for example, back in 2007, I had already known about creative visualization through my studies of the teacher, and I'd heard about it before on his albums. He talked about if your mind can see it, you can achieve it. And when The Secret came out, we'd already been talking about those techniques at the Temple of Hip Hop. In fact, I got a van using those same techniques. I needed to get a van, and actually that's where I'll start this story. I'm going to talk about two vehicles that I got through the law of attraction. And I'm saying this a lot too about the law of attraction to my younger viewers out there, to the younger audience members. I really think that the knowledge that's in The Secret should be given to children between the ages of 8 and 13. I think it's a good time to learn how to be creative, how to use creative visualization. Because we want the ability to draw those things or have those things come through us or attract those things to us, the law of attraction, the so-called law of attraction, to attract those things to us that we need in life. So if we need to get a job, we want to be able to attract the right job to us. If we need friends, we want to be able to attract the right type of friends to us. If we need a car, we want to attract that right car to us. And that is well and good. Don't make any mistake. I'm not dissing the law of attraction at all tonight. What I'm doing though is I want to talk deeper about what that really means, because that same visualization, that same feeling, that same emoting can actually bring love into our lives. And not love from, say, a partner or other people, but actual love, the feeling of love into ourselves. That same law of attraction can bring peace and prosperity into our lives. It can bring knowledge into our lives. It can bring God into our lives. But if we're only limited by what we can creatively visualize, then we're not going to be able to really see the totality of the gifts and of the great times and events and that God can bring to us, those profound moments where we really see and hear God's voice and we recognize, I could not have had this in my life. I would not have experienced this in my life if it wasn't for this miracle. So rewind back to 2005. I was a landscaper. I just got a new home using some techniques in the book Ruminations, which I haven't got to yet because it's such a profound study in and of itself, but written by our teacher, KRS-One, this book Ruminations right here. Get a copy if you can get a copy. I've seen them upwards from $150 to $400. So they're a rare book. But if you can get a copy of Ruminations, it's worth the time and the reason to add it to your library of study with all this knowledge that we're studying. So I'd got the book, The Ruminations, I think around late 2003, early 2004. And I started putting the techniques that I learned in Ruminations to work. I decided I was going to open up my own business, my own landscaping business. I had been landscaping for 14 years, and I decided it was time to venture out on my own. I decided to go and get a new house in a new city and move my family to this new house and to this new city. And so I started putting those things to use. I started using my creative visualization techniques to bring those things into my life. And it was great. I had this plan. You see what I'm saying? I had this plan that I'd attracted into my life. And I had this plan, and I say, this is dope. I've got this work set up. I've got, I can see myself being a supervisor, landscape company of my own business, doing my own work, hands-on, hire a few employees, give people jobs and make some more money so I could support my family, visualize the new house, got the new house. Things were really coming together in that world for me as a landscaper. I knew I had put my time in as a landscaper. And so here's what I mean about that. This was my visualization was limited to my experience. And so part of letting go and letting God is realizing that our visualization techniques being just limited to our experience and even the experience of others, if I had just limited myself to that, I would have missed the miracle that happened after I met the teacher and started rolling with the temple of hip hop for real. Because I could have never visualized those opportunities on my own. Those opportunities came to me by the grace of God and by and through the will of God. And so here it is, it's 2004, late 2004 now. I moved into a new house in a new city and I'm starting a new landscaping business. I had applied for my contractor's license. I had the experience. I had all the signatures I needed from the people I'd worked with. I was confident. I was ready to start my own business. I had started doing jobs because the real estate agent knew I was a landscaper. She started hiring me out for jobs on properties that she she was selling. She would bring me in to clean up yards and to re-landscape certain areas and just get them fixed up. And it was good money. It was great. It was under the table, which I always appreciate, cash under the table. Uncle Sam ain't looking, the IRS ain't looking, making that cash under the table. And, it was a life that I was already starting to plan. About 2 months into it, I received an email from the Temple of Hip Hop. Now, this all goes into a bigger story. I don't have time to tell that whole story here. But I received an invitation to come down to the Temple of Hip Hop on January 8th, 2005. Or I'm sorry, January 9th, 2005. Well, January 8th, 2005, there was going to be a concert. And January 9th, 2005 was going to be the roundtable discussion. And at the this letter was addressed to me because I've been donating money to the Temple of Hip Hop. I've told this story before. I'm not going to get into it all now, but I went to a concert, got a flyer to donate money to the Temple of Hip Hop, started sending my $25 down a week, and got a call from the teacher even. I missed the call, missed my opportunity to talk to him, and I thought that was it. I thought, well, I'm not going to hear from him ever again, but I'm glad that I sent that money down and he left a message on my answering machine. Greatest moment of my life. Another story in and of itself. But to breeze over this story really quickly, I got this email that said, well, we're inviting you down to the Temple of Hip Hop, the roundtable discussion. KRS-One's, the teacher's going to be there. Kool Herc's going to be there. They said Africa Bambaataa was going to be there. Melly Mel, Busy Bee, Grandmaster Caz, Kool Mo D, and there was a few other names on that list that were supposed to be there. And I thought, wow, what an opportunity to become part of something historic. And I've been sending some money down to the Temple of Hip Hop. I wanted to see where the money was going. I wanted to see what this was all about. I had a good feeling about this. But keep in mind, I had just moved into a new house. This was the plan that I had for myself based on my understanding and based on my experience. I had decided to become a full-time landscaper, owning and operating my own company. And see, had I gone on with only what I understood, I would have maybe seen that opportunity to come down and drive down to Los Angeles from North Cali. It was like an 8 or 9 hour drive. I would have seen that opportunity and thought, well, maybe I shouldn't take this opportunity right here, because I have other responsibilities. I don't really have the time nor the money to be traveling down to Los Angeles for this Temple of Hip Hop meeting. But lo and behold, I decided to go. I said, okay, I'm going to go down to this meeting. And this is January 9th, 2005, the roundtable discussion. I'll put a picture of it here for historical purposes. So I got my things packed in the car, called ahead, got a hotel room reserved, 77 Vine in Sunset, off of Sunset Boulevard there, down in Los Angeles area. And I packed up my Jeep and I drove down. It was a Jeep Grand Cherokee, and on my way down, I got in a wreck, right? Somebody came up and smashed the back of my car, and I'm breezing over this story. This is a fascinating story for real. I'll probably have to dedicate, 4 hours just to the story of how I arrived at the Temple of Hip Hop sometime. But this is the breezed over version. This guy slammed into the back of my Jeep. I took it, just held on because I saw the lights coming, and he just smashed my Jeep. I drove that wrecked Jeep all the way down. I felt like there was some part of my destiny here. I felt something, this is beyond the creative visualization. I had literally let go and let God at that moment, because God delivered me down to Los Angeles and down to the roundtable discussion. Actually, the night before was a concert, and it was the teacher, Grandmaster Caz, Busy Bee, Kool Mo D, and the father of hip hop culture, Kool DJ Herc. Boom, put all their pictures up here. So I went down there and I saw this great concert, amazing concert, one of the best hip hop shows I've ever seen, if not the best show I've ever seen. And the next day got up and went to the roundtable discussion. And those same people who were at the concert that night, who were performing that night, Kool Herc, Busy Bee, Grandmaster Caz, and Kool Mo D, and of course the teacher, they were all there at this roundtable discussing the future of hip hop and also the history of hip hop as well. Now, I would have never been there if I just relied solely upon my own experiences and creative visualization techniques that I was using up to that moment. But now I was there, and God was opening up a whole new world to me, a whole new earth, really to me, really a whole new heaven, the kingdom of Hippopia, really opening up a whole new city, a whole new place to me, and a whole new opportunity in life that if I had just relied upon my own understanding, I would have never arrived there. So, fast forward, I start going down every week. I start making this trek. I'm driving home, spending time with the family, making some money, doing some landscaping, and then driving back down in my work truck because my Jeep got wrecked. The family Jeep got wrecked, had to take the work truck down. And so I was driving down every week with these, with the money that I'd make in this time, because I really believed in the temple of hip hop. I really believed in what the temple of hip hop was doing. I met the teacher too that first, on January 9, 2005. I met the teacher. It's like I want to tell some of this story, but I don't want to get into that story because it's a long story. So I'm going to save how I met the teacher for those of you who haven't heard that story yet, and that interaction. I'm going to save that for later because that's a really good story. But it's really not the purpose of this let go and let God. That's really not the purpose of this message from the minister. I'm going to save that, kind of a treat for later, a treat for the future. But so I met the teacher, and then I started going down to these weekly meetings at the Temple of Hip Hop there on Hollywood Boulevard. And I know most of y'all thinking Hollywood Boulevard. Well, you guys were in Hollywood? Well, yeah, if you know Hollywood Boulevard, yeah, you know that Hollywood, that it's in the ghetto. For real. We was in the ghetto. We had a Temple of Hip Hop, and it was an old hotel, and the teacher was renting out a space in this old hotel, and that was the Temple of Hip Hop building. And so we were putting together this tour at the end of these meetings, and this is like 4 or 5, 6 weeks maybe into it. He puts out the call, and he says, those of you who want to go on tour, there's opening. All of you are invited. There's 40, 50, maybe 100. I don't remember the exact numbers of us there who were invited to go out on tour. And I was like, I want to go on tour with KRS One Word at the Temple of Hip Hop Word. I mean, all of a sudden these ideas started getting into my mind because I was letting go and letting God, which meant I was letting go of my old life, which meant I was letting go of those things that I had visualized and brought into my life. I was letting go of that. And this is a warning, or this is just a word of advice. If you start letting go of those things in your life, it's not always the easiest thing to do as they start letting go and you start living your destiny. That's why I always encourage younger people to start your path when you're young. Start when you're young. Start seeing the world when you're young. Start grabbing those opportunities that come to you when you're young. Start finding your purpose when you're young. I was 33 years old when I started my journey in the Temple of Hip Hop. 33 years old, 32, 33, by the time I was out on tour, I turned 33. I mean, it was massive change for a 30-year-old who had already built a family, built a career, built a job, already had a lifestyle. But, I've said this before, I was worn out doing landscaping already. That's why I wanted to start my own business. I didn't want to keep digging trenches. I wanted to pay somebody else to dig the trenches and let me design the landscape. Let me go buy the plants and do all that, all the fun stuff that's involved in landscaping. But I was a 32-year-old who was worn out. My back was tired. I was sore all the time. I was going through certain forms of depression at the time because I was no longer really expressing myself. I've talked about this before. I wasn't making any music. And so when I heard the opportunity to go on tour with the teacher and with the Temple of Hip Hop, I embraced that. I let go and let God. I let go of everything. I let go and let God, and it had some consequences in my life. There are going to be actual consequences in your life when you really let go and let God and you really go on your spiritual path. So the teacher puts out the call and he says, if anybody wants to go on tour, we're gonna need a van. And I said, word. And so he said, if you go talk to my manager, his manager at the time. I went and talked to the manager. I said, yo, I got a van. He said, you got a van? What kind of van you got? I said, well, I don't really got a van, but I know creative visualization. And the teacher just given a lesson, and I'll give that lesson right now too, just to pass this on, especially to the younger people who haven't really tried this before, and anybody at any age. This you can do. If you want something in life, but you don't really have the money for it, and you don't really know how you're going to get it, buy something small that requires to be used for that, for what you're creatively visualizing into your life. For example, if you see a new house for you and your family, if you see a new house, go out and buy a lamp, and keep that lamp in a box. Keep that box where you can see it every day. And every time you look at that lamp in that box, visualize yourself turning that lamp on and off. Visualize yourself taking that lamp out of the box and putting it on the table in your new home. And sooner or later, it's going to happen. These are techniques. These are metaphysical techniques to help you bring those things into your life. Same thing with the car. He actually said, if you're down to your last $5, go out and you want a new car, go out and buy the can of Armor All, buy the bottle of Armor All, and put it somewhere where you can see it every day, and then visualize. Don't use it on your car that you have, or don't use it on anything. Leave that Armor All brand new where you can see it every day. And visualize yourself spraying that Armor All on the tires of your new car. And a new car, remember, don't have to be a brand new car. It can be a used car. It can be the whip that you want in your life. Visualize yourself using the Armor All and that whip that you're calling into your life, that whip that you're attracting into your life. So he had given that lesson just hours before. He said, welcome you all. If you want to go on to a tour, we're going to need a van. So I went up and I was going to put that lesson to use. I'd already been putting the techniques from ruminations into use. I was already getting used to visualizing things and having them happen in my life. I hadn't really realized yet this part I'm talking about today about letting go and letting God, based on, because God sees beyond our experiences. And if we only use the creative visualization, it's only based on what we've experienced and the experiences of others, we kind of cut out the miracle of God. But I hadn't really realized that yet at the time. I was just in such a flow. I didn't realize what was actually happening to me, the actual transformation that was taking place in my life. And so I said, yeah, I can get a van. I told the manager, I said, yeah, I'll get a van. I said, I got my work truck. I'll sell my work truck. My work truck was worth like $1,500. I was thinking I'll just get I seen reliable vans, like cargo vans all over the place. And the manager says, yo, no, what we need for a van, we need a van conversion. We need a conversion van with, captain's chair and a DVD player and a CD changer. Back when CDs were popular, for all you young people out there, it wasn't that long ago. We was always rocking the CDs as our only source of music besides cassettes and records. But so I sat there and I said, yo, I'm going to get this van. And I went back home to North Cali, and I started visualizing getting this van in my life. Started visualizing that. And on the way back, I actually had like $5. I had $10 in my pocket, put $5 in my work truck to finally get me home. Grabbed a can of Armor All with the other $5. Took that Armor All, just like the lesson I learned from the teacher, put it up on the shelf and just looked at it and visualized myself using that on a new van. Well, a month later, when the tour was starting, I had already gotten a new van, and that's a whole story in and of itself. It was a used van, but it was like 18,000 miles. It was a 99 Dodge Ram van, and it was dope, man. I mean, it was clean, it ran great, it smelled good, it was everything that I had visualized. And the way that it came to me is a whole other story. I'll tell these stories in the future when I tell the story of Zin Uru and how I became Minister Zin Uru. But I'm just giving little pieces here because the main theme of this is letting go and letting God. But I want to talk about creative visualization as well, because I think all of my people, all my nobility out there, we all need to know and understand what creative visualization is and what it means, and the law of attraction and what it is and what it means, but also understand and overstand really that there is something deeper going on that requires us to let go of our own comprehension, that requires us to let go of our own intellect, that requires us to let go of our own desires, our own wants, and our own needs, and to really let go and let God. So I got the van though. I showed up on tour with the van. I even remember taking that Armor All when I finally got the van and got it all washed up and clean, hand washed it all myself. And when I got to the tires, just looking at that bottle of Armor All, looking at the tires on the van and spraying those tires. Got them all clean and nice, and it was just a little bottle of Armor All, so I only used it a couple of times on the van. But yeah, it came through. The creative visualization technique had actually worked. The law of attraction, the so-called law of attraction, had actually worked for me. And it's a lesson that, like I said before earlier on, it's really good for 8-year-olds to 13-year-olds. And if you're a parent out there, I would encourage you to teach your children that, the law of attraction. Maybe show them this movie, The Secret. So fast forward around 2008, we needed a new car because I'd ran the van into the ground already, and my family was, needed a new car, and I needed something I could take on tour, and The Secret came out. And so I had my kids watch The Secret with me. My ex and I watched The Secret with the kids, and we used those techniques from The Secret to visualize getting this Ford Excursion, this V10 Ford Excursion. Oh man, had no business getting this. Because remember, when I got that other van, when I even got this Ford Excursion, I didn't have a job. I said I was a landscaper, but I didn't have proof of income or anything like that. I got laughed out of a couple places. I didn't have money to put down because all my money was going into these trips down to Los Angeles and into this new house I had just got. So, keep that in mind. Like the law of attraction, it's not limited to what your circumstances are, because God's not limited to your circumstances. Your superpowers, those things that you have, aren't limited to your circumstances. You can actually visualize yourself out of poverty. We can visualize ourselves out of depression. We can visualize ourselves out of any kind of circumstance or environment that we're in for something better in our lives, something better. And we got really the deeper meaning too, just to put a little insert into here, is that, it's really about feeling it into existence. And when we get to our reading tonight in the Gospel of Hip Hop, it's going to talk about feeling it into existence, feeling those things that we need in our lives into existence. But now I have these vehicles, but remember too, when you get the new vehicle, you also got to pay for the vehicles. This is something they didn't teach in The Secret. This is something I hadn't really thought about before. You can go and attract a new Ford Excursion, which they don't even make anymore, but back then that was like the flyest whip you could get, was the biggest whip you could get. We called it the Golden Chariot. It was this big V10 Golden Chariot Ford Excursion. And, I visualized that into our family visualized that into our lives, and we got it. We saw ourselves driving it. But then every month we almost had a $600 payment. I can't even believe I'm saying it. I can't even do that no more. But all of a sudden each month had to come up with that payment on top of the mortgage payment, on top of the food bills, on top of the electric bills, on top of the travel expenses, on top of this, that, and the other, all the bills that we got in life. So don't forget, in the creative visualization process, you might be saying, I want a new Porsche in my life. I want that new Porsche. I seen that new Porsche. And all of a sudden you got the new Porsche. But you still got to make the monthly payments, and you still got to make the insurance payments, and you still got to, the maintenance payments or whatever it is on that car. So don't forget, especially, this is why I say learn when you're young, because young kids maybe want a new bike in their life, or they maybe want a new PlayStation or whatever the video game console is in their life, or some new clothes in their life. Because for kids, it's better to learn when they don't want a house or a car and these expensive payments about the law of attraction. Let them learn the smaller lessons when they're younger. I wish I would have learned about the law of attraction, but nobody was teaching that in my environment, in the realm, in the world that I lived in. Nobody was teaching the law of attraction. Not that nobody knew about it, but in my environment, nobody was teaching the law of attraction. The way I ever really first heard about it was through KRS-One tapes and cassettes and CDs, And so keep that in mind, let the young kids learn and make a little mistakes and play around with it. So then as they get older, they'll mature with it. See, even by 2007, we even manifested a giant, even had the law of attraction bring a 37-foot RV into our lives, but still had to make that payment. I wasn't learning the lessons. I hope you understand what I'm saying here. It took me a while to get to that. I don't know why I got to bump my head 3 or 4 times till I finally say, oh, I got a duck over here. I've tried to cut that out of my life now, and I have to keep making the same mistakes 3 or 4 times. But hey, this is how we all learn. This is how we gain wisdom. That's why I'm the minister. That's why I can come up and teach these lessons, because I have experience with these lessons. So letting go and letting God now. You know, in a world that just really promotes that the ultimate part of spirituality, and if you really go in, to a lot of the so-called New Age thinking, or the prosperity movement in Christianity, the so-called prosperity movement in Christianity, you start seeing that it's like they only see the blessing of God as when you get stuff in your life. You get that job you always want. That's God's blessing. But sometimes God's blessing is when you lose that job you thought you always wanted. See, they'll say in the prosperity movement, like, God's blessing is upon you. I could see that new house. And sometimes you don't even know that new house that you always wanted and you finally got, the God's blessing is taking that house away from you. Now, I know I'm teaching this form of spirituality that a lot ain't teaching. This is a deeper level to God, because when we let go and let God, we can get beyond the boundaries that we've set for ourselves based on our intellect and based on our experiences and the experiences of others. If my whole life was just based on my own experiences at that time and the experiences of others, I would have never even joined the Temple of Hip Hop. I would have never went on tour with the teacher, because I never knew anybody who had done that before. It was something new that God brought to me. It was something new, that these opportunities that God puts us in. God puts us in these opportunities so we can grow beyond our old understanding, so we can grow beyond our own limited intellect, so we can go and grow beyond our own limited understanding and our own limited perceptions. Now feel me here. Feel me here. When we let go and let God, like when I really let go and let God, I started trying to attract those things into my life that I thought I wanted, only to realize that God wanted something different for me. And some of those circumstances and some of those places that I've been and some of those things that I went through were to grow my character, were to grow my soul, were to grow me into the man who I am today. I had to let go and let God, and I ended up sleeping on couches after owning a home. I ended up not having a car after owning all those fly whips, after owning the Excursion, after owning the van. I ended up having a beat-up old car. But I didn't care, because I learned now to let go and let God, and God was driving me. I'm not saying that to live this lifestyle or to live any kind of lifestyle that you got to give those things up. I'm just saying from my experience, when I let go and let God, God wanted me to be sleeping on a couch in Ohio. God wanted me to be wrecked on the side of the road. God wanted me to go through a divorce. Woo! God wanted me to have my house foreclosed. God wanted me to be broke and in debt. God wanted me to be living on rice and beans while I'm learning to MC. God wanted those things for me. And I started to learn that I was working against those things for so many years and wondering, God, what am I doing wrong? Why am I losing all these things in my life? Only to realize that God was taking those things out of my life because God wanted to show me that life ain't about that Zin Uru. Life is about the inner person. Life is about your character, Zin. Life is about what I can show you, my son, my child. And as I learned to let go and let God, to let go of my preconceived notions, as I learned to let go of those things that I was holding on to so desperately, as I learned to embrace what God was bringing to me, as I was learning to embrace the different couches that I was sleeping on, the different places that I was traveling, the different people that I was meeting, the different circumstances that God brought into my life, I realized that God was doing a great work in my life that I could have never visualized based on my own experiences and intellect. That's what it means to let go and let God. It means to give up our preconceived ideas of what we think we know about God and allow it to happen. And I can even say in the microcosm of how I got my van, I had to let go and let God, and I didn't realize that's what I was doing at the time. But my intellect didn't work. All the traditional ways of the world didn't work. When I got the van, it happened in a supernatural way. So even when you're using the so-called law of attraction and creative visualization, as you're teaching it to your kids, remember to always include letting go and letting God, because God has billions of ways to deliver something to you and through you. And if we only base it on our limited human understanding, our limited intellectual understanding, if we think that only God can only bring this thing into our life in one way, at one time, then we're limiting God. And so much of this new wave of spirituality, so-called spirituality in the world, limits God to a human understanding. That's a fallacy. That's a fallacy in thinking. You will never get to know God if you base it on the intellect and your own understanding. How can you know an infinite source, an infinite creator with infinite possibilities and infinite ways to teach and show and bring forth and grow? How can we limit God? God is limitless. And guess what? We are limitless too, especially hip-hoppers. We are limitless. So why would we limit God? Why would we limit God to our own immature overstanding? As young spirit beings, why would we limit God like that? I want to encourage my nobility out there that if things aren't working for you, if you're like, man, I keep visualizing this in my life, I keep seeing myself doing this, I've heard about this, I want to live my purpose, I see myself doing this and that, why isn't it happening? I want to encourage you to look a little deeper and to know a little deeper, know thyself a little deeper, that God is actually showing you something about yourself, that when you embrace your circumstances, that we embrace where we're at in life, when we embrace our circumstances, when we embrace our poverty, when we embrace our so-called lack, we realize that we're not lacking anything. We realize that we're not in poverty because the wealth is worth so much more than that. God's wealth, the wealth that God has, the Spirit, this experience on earth is priceless. Your hand, your arm, your legs, your brain, your breath, it's priceless. You can't put a price on that. And so many of us do. So many of us go to jobs that we hate because we don't believe. We don't have that faith. We haven't let go. We haven't let go and let God. So we're living a life that's contradictory to the life that God has for us. And we wonder why we're so miserable. We wonder why we're in such this poor condition, why we're in such a broken condition collectively, why we have no real power against this authoritative New World Order that's trying to bring us all into under its wing and tell us when we can go places, when we can't go places, and where we can live and where we can't live, and what we can have and what we can't have, and what we can think and what we can't think. The only reason they're able to do that is because we're limiting God, because we've tried to take God out of the equation. Yeah, we might think of God in an intellectual way, but are we really feeling God? Are we really communing with God? God right here, closer to us than our faith and our living breath within our heart? The God of Christ, the Christ connection with God. I've been saying this for a while. Christ is like the interface with God, right? The human interface with God. Why would we limit God? We can see the effects of limiting God because our whole world is based on God being limited and the government being all powerful. How many people believe the government? When the government, you know the government lies. It's called cognitive dissonance. Look it up. Stockholm syndrome even. Look it up. Cognitive dissonance is when somebody knows the truth, knows they're being lied to, knows that they're being gaslit, and they still go along with it anyways. It's sad watching people believe the government. It's sad right now. I mean, my heart's breaking right now watching our community believe the lies of the media and believe the lies of the government. and believe the lies of the medical industry right now in 2021. My heart is heavy because of that. Because people are stuck in cognitive dissonance. They're so used to being abused and lied to that it is accepted as normal, and they accept that the government knows more than God. Do you have more faith in the government, or do you have more faith in God? Is the government more powerful to you, or is God more powerful? And really check yourself and check your family and check those around you. Live in that. Because I'll tell you that the truth is the government ain't nothing. The government is an illusion at the end of the day compared to the almighty, all-living creator of all that is. That's just allowing that government to exist right now to teach us all a lesson, to bring us all back to God, back to our creator, back to the source that created all of us. Lean not on our own understanding. Lean not on our own overstanding of situations. Even when we think we know, we should still walk with, God can reveal something at any time. God can reveal a new event to us. God can reveal a new place to us. God can reveal new insights to us, new experiences to us at any moment. Let go and let God. Let go and let God. It's actually quite simple. It takes a little while to get there, but once you get into that flow, follow life's outcome willingly, flow, follow life's outcome willingly. Big up to the acronologist G. Simone. Once we get into the flow, follow life's outcome willingly, the flow of God, God who is guiding our direction, G-O-D, guiding our direction, God. Once we get into that, oh man. Once we get into that as an individual, the world starts changing. And once we can get into that collectively, we're going to start changing too. And I've seen too many people 10, 20 years younger than me not letting go and letting God. They're holding on to the world because, I don't know, Zin, I don't know if I can do it. You got to do it. I'm telling you, you either let go of the world now or wait until the world lets go of you. Because sooner or later, this all is going to come to a head. Sooner or later, all this craziness that's happening in the world, karma is going to catch up to the world. And where are you going to be? You're going to be clinging to the world when karma catches up to it, or because karma is going to catch up to you too if you're clinging to the world. Like I said, 4 or 5 weeks ago, I said, those who stand with the New World Order are going to fall with the New World Order. Because the New World Order is falling. You may not see it now. But when God strikes quick. And God will knock that New World Order out of place quick. And where will you be? And where will we be as a community? I'm going to read from 2 books tonight, of course. The Gospel of Hip Hop, written by our teacher KRS-One, and The Wisdom of Florence Scovel Shinn. I read from her book, the Game of Life and How to Play It. I read from that a couple weeks ago. And this book right here, I found this book, $5, like I said, $5 on eBay. And this has the Game of Life and How to Play It. And another book called The Power of the Spoken Word. Another book called Your Word is Your Wand. And another book called The Secret of Success, written in the, I want to say it was the 1940s. The 1940s. These 4 books were written in the 1940s, and they put it into one volume called The Wisdom of Florence Scovel Shinn. And great read. I'm still reading it now, but a part I read in this really speaks to what we're talking about tonight. And I'll read from that first, and then we're going to read from Our God, the Great Event in the Gospel of Hip Hop. So I chose this week because we're talking about, 2 of the things we're talking about is letting go and letting God, right? Let go and let God. And also talking about the so-called law of attraction, about, attracting those things into our life. And as we mature, attracting those things into our life that God wants for us. Can we want for ourselves what God wants? Can we desire for ourselves what God desires for us? And I'll tell you, excuse me, I'll tell you through my own experience, the ultimate thing that God wants for all of us is peace and prosperity. Peace and prosperity. And so when I was reading in here this week, I actually came across a chapter called Peace and Prosperity, and I was thinking about letting go and letting God. And as I let go and let God, God led me to this, and I wanted to just share this reading with y'all. And so Peace and prosperity in the book, The Wisdom of Florence Scovel Shinn. And actually, this is from the sub-book in here called The Power of the Spoken Word, getting into the power of the spoken word. And I'll pause through here and talk about some of the things that Florence is talking about here. Peace and prosperity. Peace be within thy walls, and prosperity within thy palaces. In this statement from the 122nd Psalm, we find that peace and prosperity go hand in hand. People who are manifesting the appearance of lack are in a state of fear and confusion. They are not wide awake to their good and missed leads and opportunities. A peaceful person is a wide awake person. He sees clearly and acts quickly. He never misses a trick. I have seen people discordant and unhappy changed completely. I will give an example in order to prove the workings of the law. A woman came to me in a state of her abject sorrow. She looked the part. Her eyes were blurred from constant weeping. Her face was haggard and drawn. The man she loved had left her, and she was certainly the most demagnetized creature I had ever seen. I noticed the shape of her face, large eyes far apart, and a pointed chin. For many years I was an artist and have got into the habit of looking at people from an artist's standpoint. As I looked at this forlorn creature, I thought, her face has the modeling of a Botticelli. I often see Rembrandt's, Sir Joshua Reynolds, etc. in the people I meet. I spoke the word for this woman and gave her my book, The Game of Life, and how to play it. A week or two afterwards, in walked a very dashing person. Her eyes were beautiful and she was very pretty. I thought, her face has the modeling of a Botticelli. Suddenly I realized it was the same woman. She was happy and carefree. What had happened? Our talk and the book had brought her peace. Peace be within your walls. Your walls are your consciousness. Jesus Christ emphasized peace and rest. Come to me, all ye that are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. He was speaking of the Christ within, your superconscious mind, where there are no burdens and no battles. The doubts and fears and negative pictures are in the subconscious. When I was returning from California some years ago, I came in an aeroplane. In the high altitude, I had a queer detached feeling. In that high altitude, we are at peace with ourselves and with the whole world. In the high altitudes, the fields are always white with the harvest. Only the emotions keep you from reaping your harvest of success, happiness, and abundance. We read in the Bible, I will restore you to the year the locust, I will restore you to the years the locusts have eaten. We might well paraphrase it and say, I will restore to you the years the emotions have ruined. People are racked with doubts and fears, bringing failure, unhappiness, and dis-ease. Let's pause there for a second. See, once we let go and let God, we get into that Christ within. We get into that consciousness within that brings peace. Because when we don't have peace, we start attracting to those things in our life that aren't peaceful. We start attracting ourselves into those conditions in life and those events in life that aren't peaceful. And sometimes, I'll say this as a spiritual man, and for spiritual men and spiritual women out there, sometimes we do have to sacrifice our peace to bring forward some kind of a teaching or some kind of a lesson to the world. But that should always be done on your will and on your terms, or on God's terms and God's will. I read in a daily paper that the laws of the mind are being generally recognized and understood. It has been found that fear of failure is the greatest of all fears, or at least 75% of those examined psychologically have this failure fear. Of course, this may refer to failure of health, failure in business, finances, love, success, etc. Other important fears are fear of the dark, fear of being alone, fear of animals. Some people fear they will be misunderstood. While others fear, they are losing mental control. Constant and continued fear affects the glands, interferes with digestion, and is usually associated with distressing nervous symptoms. It robs the body of health and destroys happiness. Fear is man's worst enemy, for you attract what you fear. It is faith turned upside down. It is really faith in evil instead of faith in good. Why are you fearful, O ye of little faith? The fearless, unfettered mind attracts to itself all good. Whatever you desire or require is already on your pathway. Before ye called, I have answered. That's powerful right there. One of my favorite science fiction novels I read as a youth is called Dune by Frank Herbert. They did a pretty good movie of it. They've actually done a couple good movies of it. You can watch the movie Dune, or you can read the book Dune if you ever have the time. It's quite a bit of an investment of time, but they've got a new movie of Dune coming out sometime this year or next year, and I don't know how that one's going to be. But books, most science fiction books are much better than the movies. But something I learned from that book that I've taken with me is Muad'Dib, the lead character, the Messiah in the book, Muad'Dib, he says, fear is the mind killer. He was taught fear is the mind killer. And, fear kills the mind. When we're in a constant state of fear of so many different things, when we're afraid of failure, when we're afraid of the dark, when we're afraid of businesses and finances, we're afraid of love, we're afraid of success, we're afraid of animals, we're afraid of being alone, when we're afraid of death, we actually fear life. And we start attracting those things that we fear into our lives because remember, we really attract who we are in life. Really, those things and circumstances that happen to us in life are really about to show us who we are and where we need to grow from. So if we're walking around in a constant state of fear, God is going to bring those fearful things to show us to not be afraid, to teach us not to be afraid. Fear not. I ain't afraid of nothing. I ain't afraid that I ain't going to do something stupid. I'm not reckless like that. I don't fear the new world order. I don't fear it at all because I've embraced the true world order. I don't fear the devil. The devil's a little insignificant creature. I don't fear any of that. I could say I fear God. And the only reason I can say I fear God is because I understand what it means to fear God. It means I have the ultimate respect for what God can do and for God's powers. And I've had my ass kicked by God enough times to know, I got to be respectful. I'm playing with God. I'm playing with God no more. No, I'm surrendered and submitted to God, the great event over my whole life. But I don't live in fear of the world. I don't live in fear of the new age, the new world order. I don't live in fear of what the media is saying. I don't live in fear of none of that. I'm going to read this paragraph again. Fear is man's worst enemy. Remember, I said fear is the mind killer. Fear is man's worst enemy, for you attract what you fear. It is faith turned upside down. It is really faith in evil instead of good. Why are ye fearful, O ye of little faith? The fearless, unfettered mind attracts to itself all good. Whatever you desire or require is already on your pathway. And look at that word right there, require. What do you require? Before ye call, I have answered. That's God saying to you, what you required, I already know what you required. It's on your pathway. Walk forward in faith and not fear. Suppose we paraphrase the scriptures and say, whatever you desire or require is already planted on your pathway. Often a new word will give you sudden realization. If you are in need of any information, it will be given to you. A friend told me of this surprising working of the law. She was translating an old Italian manuscript on the life of an early Persian ruler. No books in English had ever been written on the subject. She wondered why the publishers were holding back its publication. One evening, she was eating her dinner at the automat. She fell into a conversation with a man at the same table. She told him of the work she was doing and of the translation of the early Italian manuscript. He suddenly volunteered the information. You'll have a hard time getting it published because this Persian ruler's ideas conflict with the ideas of the present government. He was a student and a scholar and knew more than she did on the subject. Her question was answered, and at the automat. Such information could usually be gleaned only in the archives of some public library. Now check this out here. God works in unexpected places, his wonders to perform. She had worried about it, but when she was peaceful and happy and unconcerned, the information sailed in over a calm sea. Let go and let God. This woman, once she had let go, she literally let go and let God, and the answer just found her while she was eating dinner somewhere and meets a so-called random stranger, and he has the answer that she was looking for because she had let go and let God. She was no longer afraid. She wasn't worried about the outcome. Our feet shall stand within thy gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem stands for peace and the feet for understanding. And let's stop there. Jeru, which is Uru, means city. And Salem means peace. Jerusalem means the city of peace. Our feet shall stand within the gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem stands for peace and the feet for understanding. So understanding always brings us within the gates of peace. How can a person attain peace when his whole life is in turmoil? By taking an affirmation. You cannot control your thoughts, but you can control your words, and eventually the word wins out. Most people have attracted inharmonious conditions because they have been fighting their battles and carrying their burdens. We must learn to get out of God's way. Check it out. Get out of God's way. We must learn to get out of God's way so that he can harmonize or adjust the situation. We talked about harmony a couple weeks ago when we talked about repentance is God's way of harmonizing us. When we let go and let God, when we get out of God's way, God then harmonizes us. That's actual repentance. Letting go and letting God is a form of repentance. It might be the ultimate repentance. And something else I wanted to talk about right here, it says, you cannot control your thoughts, but you can control your words, and eventually the word wins out. Let me tell you right now, this is a great lesson, and she doesn't really get into it here, but I want to tell you from my own experience. Watch what you say. Watch what you speak into existence. That's the power of the word. The power of the word has great power. So you might be thinking and feeling a certain way, but if you don't express it in words, you don't give those thoughts or those feelings any more power than they have internally. And you don't externalize that internal turmoil. When we don't speak our worries, when we don't speak out our doubts, when we don't speak out of fear, when we don't speak out of anger, when we don't speak out of frustration, when we don't speak out of anxiety, we don't attract those things into our life because they remain internal. We might have to work on our internal anxiety. We might have to work on the internal anger that we're feeling or those negative things that we're feeling inside. But when we stop speaking those things out into existence, we stop attracting those things into our lives. For real. That's the power of the word. Be mindful of the words you speak. If you're feeling depressed, don't speak depression into your environment. I had to learn this lesson. I learned it through many years. I started saying to myself, yeah, I am feeling kind of angry right now, but I'm not going to speak this anger out into existence. As a matter of fact, as we like to point out in the temple of hip hop, when the tempting moment arrives, just be still and do nothing. I'm tempted to speak out in anger, but if I be still and do nothing, I'm tempted to speak out in fear, but when I be still and do nothing and don't speak those words out, that tempting anger, that tempting fear goes away. It eventually passes. And then by not speaking it out into existence, we don't attract it into our lives any longer. Let's continue. The word harmonize is a very good one. For I have seen crooked places made straight and adjustments made that no human mind could have thought of. All that the kingdom affords is yours. If you will give infinite intelligence right of way, for it has already supplied a lavish supply for every demand. but it must be fully trusted. If you doubt or fear, you lose your contact with this supreme force. So if you're filled with doubts and fears, it is necessary to do something to show your faith. Faith without words or action is dead. Active faith impresses the subconscious with expectance, and you keep your contact with universal intelligence. Just as Wall Street watches the market, we must watch our faith market. Often the faith market is down. Sometimes it goes down and down until a crash comes, some unhappy situation which we could have prevented. We realize we followed reason instead of intuition. Talked about intuition last week. Don't let those fears get to you. Don't act out of fear. Act out of faith. And her advice here is great. When you're feeling fear, act out of faith. And that will strengthen you. That will strengthen your confidence in yourself and your God and your situation, for real. A woman told me she had several definite leads not to follow a certain course. In spite of this, she followed the reasoning mind, and great unhappiness developed from it. Intuition is our unerring guide. Practice following it in little things, then you will trust it in the big things. I have a friend who is very intuitive. She sometimes calls up and says, "I've just had a hunch to call you up, so I thought I would find out what it is about." Invariably, I have some mission for her. Follow that still small voice in your head. We must continue to follow that still small voice. First on the little things, and once we get used to hearing that still small voice in our head, that voice of faith, which is God, once we follow those little things, we learn to trust it, have faith in it, and then we trust the bigger things that faith is speaking into us. How many times do we not listen to that little voice later to say, "I should have. I wish I would have listened. My first thought was to not go there, but I went there anyway, and inevitably something bad happened, which I could have avoided if I would have listened to my intuition in the first place." We are indeed living magic lives, guided, protected, and provided for. All fear would be banished forever with the realization of this amazing system the universal has provided for man. He would be unmoved by adverse appearances, knowing, as the early Hebrews knew, that Jehovah goes before and every battle is won. God goes before us and every battle is won. Know that. Know that. That's why I don't fear the New World Order. God has already defeated the New World Order. A friend told me a very interesting story. A man in the paper business in Kalamazoo, Michigan, has given away 1,000 of my books to his employees. He went into business on a small capital and gave up cold judgment and reasoning. He has built up a $12 million business by following leads and hunches. All his workers have a knowledge of metaphysical law. And this is $12 million back in 1940. Imagine what that means today. That's me just adding to that. He went into business on a small capital, which means he went into business with just a little bit of money, but he gave up his cold judgment and his old reasoning. He had built up a $12 million business by following leads and hunches. All his workers have a knowledge of metaphysical law. Another man who built his business upon the law of giving and receiving, that's perform charity right there in the divine performance. You can read perform charity. Another man who built his business upon the law of giving and receiving met with the same amazing success. He came to Philadelphia with a little money and bought a magazine, an old publication. His desire was to give the people a great deal for a very small price. He believed in the law of giving. It proved to be one of the most popular magazines. He gave the public the best in the way of stories and illustrations and paid well for them. The more he gave, the more he received. Millions poured in. Peace be within thy walls and prosperity within thy places. Peace and prosperity go hand in hand. Great peace have they that love thy law, and nothing shall offend them. This law is the law of non-resistance. Resist not evil, overcome evil with good. transmute all failure into success, lack into plenty, and discord into peace. We all have this power. We have the power to transmute our fear into faith. All the disharmony in our lives, we have the power within us through God to transmute it into peace. We have the power within us to transmute our poverty into prosperity, our sickness into health. Each and every one of us has this power within us through God. Let us awaken to the God within for our peace and our prosperity. And let us not lean on our own limited understanding. Let us lean on the understanding of God for what peace and prosperity actually looks like in our life. Because I'll tell you, sometimes what we think might be peace in our lives, we arrive there and it causes more trouble because we leaned on our own understanding as opposed to God's understanding of what God wants for us. If you're attracting the love of your life into your life, lean on God's understanding. Don't make a list of what you expect out of a person. Yeah, you don't want certain traits in a person and certain qualities in a person, but God knows more about a partner than you even know about a partner for your life. Can you lean upon God? Can you surrender to God? Can you let go and let God bring peace and prosperity into your life? Took me a while to get there. I thought I knew. I thought, oh, God wants me to have this excursion, only to realize the excursion caused more disorder and the excursion caused more headaches than it was worth. I had to learn that lesson. Then years later, God brought to me this old Lincoln Town car with 200,000 miles on it, and I had peace everywhere I went in that car. Got it for $1,200, not $30,000. And that $1,200 car got me everywhere I needed to go in comfort. One of my favorite cars with 200,000 miles on it. It brought peace. And when I recognized that just to have a car anywhere on earth, that's prosperity as well. What does peace and prosperity look like for you? God knows. You may not even know, but let us lean unto God, not our own understanding. Let us follow what God has for us, not our own limited understanding. Let go and let God. In closing tonight, I'd like to read from the Gospel of Hip Hop, and it's the 16th overstanding, Our God, the Great Event. We're going to be reading from track 1, and you can actually turn to page 606. Paragraph 39. Know this, there are things that even the physical body does without your permission. One of which is that it continues to live. Thoughts enter your mind without your permission. You are forced to breathe. These conditions to our reality show us that we are not exclusively responsible for our lives. We may only be responsible for our living, and this may even be questionable. We may not be responsible for life. We may only be responsible for how it is lived. We don't have all of the answers to our own existence, yet we exist. Therefore, some mysterious part of ourselves has the answers to those other parts of us that complete us, and is continuing to produce the human experience for a reason. Without our consent, let go and let God. We are not the reason that we exist because we don't have full understanding as to what makes us exist and why. If we look closely, we exist in a visible and invisible world at the same time. Things that are out of our control and planning happen to us throughout the day, which guides the type of days that we experience. With all of our planning and prediction, humanity still exists within an anything can still happen reality. There is still another force with another plan governing and guiding the conditions of nature and human affairs. This is what we call God, the consistency of our being, the condition that sustains life, the great event. For we have learned that right along with looking for God within ourselves, we must also look for God without ourselves. Meaning that we must also look at the guidance of our lives outside of ourselves and even without ourselves. When you can see without yourself, you see God. When you can act without yourself, you become God. We must develop the ability to focus upon the seemingly unplanned and spontaneous activities of our lives, especially those activities not directly caused by us that still affect us in a variety of ways. God speaks through life's circumstances. Therefore, one of the main objectives of the hip-hop spiritual life is to learn how to get out of one's own way and listen for the instruction of God. Let go and let God. Right there is our lesson. Let go and let God. Another objective of the hip-hop spiritual life is not just to unite with God, but also to realize that you already are united with God, which makes you, at this very moment, a Holy Spirit. Repent. It is you who denies your own holiness with sin and fear. It seems that the world has made you afraid of yourself. Stop denying your own holiness just to survive in the world. As a community, we must forever acknowledge the force that has already saved us from sickness, hatred, ignorance, and poverty, and has restored us to health, love, awareness, and wealth. We must stop seeking and studying the Gospels and become them. We must live to experience the true power of God and not just read about what such an experience holds for us. Our God is a real force, and it is the presence of God, the force that actually brings one's life into peace, power, and prosperity. Feeling that God is actually with you is peace, power, and prosperity. But to get into the presence of God, it is you that must open your eye first. Because believe it or not, it is not God who is denying your holiness. It is you who denies God's love. God is already with you right now. But it is you who are afraid of God. Presently, many people are blind into their God force because it frightens them. We said it earlier, fear is the mind killer. So it is impossible for them to see God. Because of guilt and fear, they hide themselves from God. Guilt and fear. That's what happened in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. Guilt and fear. God called them, where are you at? They were hiding. He said, what'd you do? Did you eat of the tree that I asked you not to eat of? They felt naked and ashamed before God because of fear, because of their own sin. Because they denied God. It wasn't God denying them. That's the oldest story in the book. Can we stop denying God? Can we let go and let God finally in our lives? The reason that our community is in poverty, the reason that these cops are killing young people, the reason that we don't have any real political power is because we refuse to let go and let God for real. Can we start letting go and letting God and quit being afraid of the world? Oh no, the devil's going to get me. Oh no, the world's got me. Don't be a wimp, be a warrior. Why be afraid? If God is with you, what do you have to be afraid of? Somebody could shoot me tomorrow. I'm not afraid because I'm with God. I continue to breathe with God. This body is not my own. This body belongs to the earth. This earth belongs to God. The spirit belongs to God. I belong to God. I'm an eternal being. You're an eternal being. We have nothing to fear. They spend billions of dollars to keep us in fear. The media is there for one purpose, to keep us in fear and to keep us from the promised land and to keep us from God. The only reason the media exists and the government exists is to keep us in fear and keep us afraid of what we truly are, which is the Spirit of God, our Holy Spirit in and of God, God's holy children. Can we awaken to that reality, my nobility? Can we finally put away those childish fears, those childish things that don't serve us in any way? If we're going to have any kind of future for our children, we better wake up now to the reality of God. And I'm talking to people who know me for years, and I still see you living in fear. You're still afraid of the government. You're still afraid of the world for no other reason than to just be fear. And maybe you want to experience fear in your own immaturity. It's time to wake up for your children's sake. No longer live in fear. Fear is the mind killer. Fear blocks God. Fear blocks the blessing. Fear blocks the truth. Fear blocks love. Fear blocks God. Fear not. The ways of the world are an illusion. Can we rise up to that hip hop? Can we rise up to the vision that God has for us? Because remember, the only thing keeping us from God is ourselves. The only thing keeping us from our holiness is ourselves. The only thing keeping us from hip-hopia is ourselves. Wake up, my nobility. We do not have any time to waste, and that is my word. Why are we wasting so much time on fear? Are we addicted to it? Do we just enjoy the immaturity? Or are we actually mocking God because our hearts have been deceived? Rise up into your wholeness, my nobility. Rise up into the word that God has for you, the purpose that God has for hip-hop. Can you see our holy city, hip-hopia, in your future? Can you see it now? Can you walk in the kingdom of heaven now, hip-hop? Rise up, let go, and let God. We've got no time to waste. God is the only thing going on daily. God is the only reality. Wake up, my nobility. Wake up. Let go and let God. Peace and so much love to you. Feel that love. Feel that love. Because love is God. Feel that love. Truth is God. Feel that truth. Freedom is God. Feel that freedom spoken of by Martin Luther King. We were not created to wallow around, to live in pity, to live in poverty. God is calling forth a mighty nation, hip-hop. Now is the time, and we are the people. Let go and let God, and be the love that you were born to be. Feel that love. Feel that warm heart of love. Have faith in your God. Have faith in what God has faith in, which is you. Now is the time, and we are the people. Repent, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Hip-hopia is at hand, my nobility. Rise up, mighty nation. And there it is. Hip!